Greetings, Fred in Alaska. Thanks for joining me today. Getting around to an update of Vincent Wassley's experience. When I initially had shared his experience out of Nunapithuk, up off the Kayigilik River, I hadn't spoken to his sister personally, and since the video uploaded or whatever, I've had a chance to speak to her. And he dug out some photos from a couple years after, a year or two after, with the tracks in the tundra and whatnot, which is at the beginning of this video, and also a little screenshot of the map on exactly where the location was. And separate from Vincent's experience, I also heard from some different villagers about some berry picking incidences. So we'll get into it. So back in 2011, in the fall, Vincent, his sister Grace, and another relative, they went out moose hunting. And, you know, they were a good, you know, distance away from the village and whatnot. So what ended up happening is Vincent didn't eat that day. And so where they ended up shoring up on the riverbank, he decided to go up on the tundra, find a berry patch and eat some berries, you know, get something on the stomach. So he was about 150, 200 feet away from the riverbank where his sister and cousin were. And as he starts to pick berries, he hears this long, drawn out, he says it sounded like a moose call, but like a cow moose call, just drawn out. And he realized after sitting there, after hearing it, that no, that's, you know, moose don't make that kind of long drawn out noise. Bears sure don't. And a man or a person just isn't capable of that long and that loud, because he said it echoed around the lake, which if you look on the map, it's a fairly large lake. So as he was sitting there eating his berries, he came to the conclusion that, well, it's probably a hairy man, and he kind of got freaked out. So while that was going on, his sister Grace and their relative were up on this little rise, and off in the distance, they saw what she said looked like a something tall and skinny and brown. And she was expecting it to be a moose. And this thing was going up the rise a little ways, kind of like at a 45-degree angle, and then coming back down by this tree. And she kept expecting it to turn broadside and see the moose, but it didn't. And after watching it a little bit, she realized it was a hairy man going back and forth. And she said it looked like, almost like it was looking for something, because it would come down by this little tree and just stand by the tree like it was looking at the tree for something, and then it would go right back over to where it was. Just real odd behavior. And she stated her cousin didn't say much different as far as that was concerned. So, you know, once Vincent gets back to the skiff and whatnot from where he was, they just kept it on the hush, because Vincent was a little freaked out by it, which, I mean, totally understandable. For something to make that loud of a noise at that distance, for it to echo around it. Look, these are native villagers. They know their area. I mean, just look at the map, and they go around there all the time without a map. You know, they know their area. They know what's in it. They know where to go for berries, for fishing. I mean, the whole bit. And so when Vincent gets back to the skiff and asks, hey, did you guys hear that? They left it alone and said no. And when Vincent, you know, about a week or so later, heard a similar sound on a Bigfoot show, he was like, that was it. And then that's when his sister and cousin came forward and said, well, we heard it too, but you were kind of freaked out, and we didn't want to, you know, keep you going, kind of deal. And which is totally understandable. Something to understand about a lot of natives, they don't typically share these things. So I'm very thankful to Vincent for, you know, coming forward and being willing to share. Definitely, you know, because there's a lot of natives that want to remain anonymous, like which I totally understand. You know, they have to live there, and regardless if everyone knows it's there, there's still, for some reason, there's still this it's almost like a shame type of deal, even though it's not anyone's fault. Any of these experiences that I've shared with you guys, it's no one's fault that they were put in that position. So separate from Vincent, in 2021, there was a group of women and children near the same area that oh, forgive me, let me back up a little bit. A year or two after that experience he had with Vincent had with his sister and cousin, they were further up they were up the, I believe he said it was the Johnson River, near the Calskag Mountains, and that's where the track came from. They thought it was a bear track initially. They followed it through the brush to the opening, saw what kind of track it was, and tracking was over. They got those pics and what have you. Which, if you look at those tracks, the amount of weight to break through to the soil, that's immense. You know, you're talking, you know, 1,000-pound plus, you know. I doubt if all three of them that were there at the time jumped on each other's back, they could have impressed the ground that deeply. Very, very, very compelling stuff. And again, thanks to Vincent for sharing those pics with us. And I'm sure there's a lot of other villagers with a whole lot of stuff out there. It just doesn't get shared around. You might see a blip on Facebook here and there, but typically, because immediately people will start saying they're fake or whatever, most natives, they just, all right, you know, well, they just don't post just because of the ridicule. And I don't blame them. Why put yourself out there just to be, you know, shot down or made fun of or called a liar, you know, things of that nature. It's just junk. But anyway, so separate from Vincent, these other villagers in 2021, they were approximately 3.6 miles outside of the village. There was a group of women and children, and the males that were in the party were off berry picking, and the women and children were in this one area near the skiffs, just doing their thing, hanging out, whatever. And way off in the distance, they see this dark thing moving backwards and forwards. And one of the first things asked to an elder is do we look that tall at that distance? You know, because it was a younger person in the group, and they all said no. So they all start watching this thing, and it's just going back and forth. I asked if there was any creepy feelings, and it was more of a curiosity thing, because I think the distance kind of alleviated the immediate fear. Well, this went on for a while, and they wanted to holler and get the attention of the guys that were in the group just down a ways berry picking, but they didn't want to draw attention to the people berry picking and potentially give the hairy man, you know, a reason to like look after him, or, you know, basically didn't want to draw attention to the berry pickers. So they stayed quiet. Well, after a while, once the people made their way back to the skiff, they pointed it out. They all looked. Well, this thing came and dropped down in the tundra, whether it was hiding or disappeared somehow. They couldn't tell because of the distance. But it was definitely not a villager. It was too big. And I'm just mentally envisioning this thing moving back and forth and then dropping down in the tundra. There's little drops, and it's very uneven on the tundra. You'll have little mounds, you'll have smaller rises with maybe some black spruce, all this kind of thing. So it's a varied terrain. Even though it may look flat on a map, that's not the case. Once you get down to the ground, you know, you got the spongy moss, the tundra, the berry bushes. It's a bumpy terrain, and this thing had just dropped down and basically was either hiding or something else. But all they knew is that it disappeared. My first thought when I heard that was the spider crawl kind of deal, because that, ugh. But anyway, some creepy shit regardless. Another thing, a lot of my fellow natives that share their experience, that their integrity is such that, like if I messed up on something, I'm gonna hear from Vincent on this, because they're very meticulous. Because out in the village, you need to know exactly what batch of tundra, what this and that is. Oh, something I had left out. There was another berry picker during that same thing where the one disappeared, that once they talked to this person later, which was right in the immediate area, just not right with the women and children and such. He had his own skiff and was doing his own thing, but near there, he reported feeling watched and got creeped out and left out of there soon. So I didn't forget that part, Vincent. Almost did, but my point being is very meticulous with the integrity of what they're sharing. Very meticulous. And if I missed anything, I'm sure I'll get a text or a call from Vincent, and he'll set me straight on it. So I apologize ahead of time if there was any little nuances that were left out from that. Again, Vincent's experience happened in 2011. The following year, or the year after, he's not quite sure, was when they got the photos on the tundra. And the last part of this experience happened to separate villagers in 2021. Again, approximately 3.6 miles away from the village. Vincent is reaching out to other villagers to see if they'll come forward. It can be tough, just because of the amount of ridicule. There's people that will post on Facebook and immediately get ripped to shreds by others. And it's really unfortunate, because a lot of people doing that, dishing out the ridicule, more than likely have never gotten off their lazy ass and been out in the woods or anywhere remote. You got to understand, this is west of Bethel, north of Nunapithuk. It's the epitome of remote. You can't get any more remote than that. I make a joke, and I say it jokingly, but you step off the road anywhere in Alaska, you're automatically remote. It's just how it is. We have moose that come through. We have bears that come through. Fox, you name it. There's wildlife everywhere. And it's one of the few places, like I know down in the States, there's black bear problems and stuff like this, and deer will come in. But up here, when the wildlife comes through, it's wildlife. There's no tameness to a moose. A moose will stomp you to death. I got a moose that's been coming around for the past few days. I gotta make sure I watch out for the dogs. You gotta go outside first, make sure, take a look around with the flashlight, make sure there's not a moose bedded down in your yard, because if you let your dogs out, they're immediately gonna run towards the moose. Moose is gonna stand up and end Benji's life. You don't want that. That's an ugly scene. Trust me, you don't want that at all. Again, thanks to Vincent. Thanks to those other villagers. And I also encourage other villagers who have had experiences, go ahead and share. I'll keep your name out of it. If you want the exact locations left out, I've already done that several times for others. But let's get these things shared with everybody. So that way it's more known and less likely to, run into ridicule in the future. But again, I want to thank Vincent and all those others who have shared. And we'll catch you guys. Oh, there should be a link. I'll post a link in the description. Dave the Tech Guy hasn't gotten into embedding it into the website yet, but there's hats and some other stuff available, or what have you. I'll post a link and you guys can check it out. There's when you go through that spread shop or whatever, there's different designs you could pick that have been selected. So check that out. Look in the description, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.